The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is a story told in staggering numbers, and more importantly, in profound human loss. So, what's really happening on the ground? In this explainer, we're going to break it down using reports from the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and Human Rights Watch to understand the collapse of the systems that keep people alive. Let's start with this quote from a displaced woman. It just cuts right to the heart of the crisis. When survival is stripped down to something as basic as finding water, the scale of this catastrophe becomes incredibly personal. And this is the reality for nearly 2 million people. So where does this all begin? Well, it starts with the collapse of the very systems that make life possible. We're talking about the foundations of daily life. The UN puts it bluntly, the conditions created by the destruction of this essential infrastructure have made Gaza, in their words, unlivable. Think about this number for a second, 1.9 million people. According to the United Nations, that's nearly the entire population of Gaza, forced from their homes. I mean, a displacement that massive has completely overwhelmed every single shelter, every hospital, and every aid resource. It's pushed people into these sprawling makeshift camps with little to no support. And you can see this destruction is systematic. An assessment using satellite imagery shows that over 95% of school buildings have been damaged or directly hit. You know, this isn't just about broken buildings. This is the erasure of an entire educational system for a whole generation of kids. The water crisis is just as bad. The Palestinian Water Authority reports that daily water production has just plummeted. It's less than a quarter of what it used to be. What does that actually mean? It means an entire population is forced to rely on contaminated, unsafe sources for drinking, for cooking, for everything. It's a perfect storm for disease. And on top of all that, aid agencies like the WHO and the UN are constantly reporting critical shortages of, well, everything you see here. No fuel means the generators for hospitals and water pumps can't run. No sanitation supplies means disease spreads like wildfire. It's a domino effect, and it's crippling every single part of life. You see, this collapse of infrastructure, it isn't some abstract concept. It has direct, life-threatening consequences. It translates into a public health catastrophe on a massive scale. The data from the World Health Organization is just stark. Let's take diarrhea cases. Before the conflict, the monthly average was around 2,000. Now, we're talking about over 500,000. Respiratory infections have passed 1 million cases. These are not just numbers. They represent an explosion of disease, all fueled by overcrowding, zero sanitation, and contaminated water. And here's the vicious cycle that medical professionals on the ground are seeing every single day. The malnutrition and dehydration that comes from having no food and no clean water, it just weakens the body's defenses. It makes people, especially children, incredibly vulnerable to the very diseases that are running rampant. And if you need one sign of just how completely the health system is broken down, it's this. Polio is back. After being wiped out in Gaza for a quarter of a century, a case was confirmed. The WHO says that routine vaccination rates have just plunged from nearly 100% down to 86%. That creates a tragic opening for preventable, life-altering diseases to make a comeback. So you have to ask, how did this happen? Was it all just random collateral damage? Well, to understand the pattern behind it, Human Rights Watch analyzed satellite imagery of these critical facilities, looking not just at what was destroyed, but how. And this is a really crucial piece of their analysis. Okay, look at this. This is the solar field for a wastewater plant. It was first damaged back in October. But by February, months later, satellite images show it wasn't just damaged in the fighting anymore. The entire field was systematically bulldozed. You can literally see the track marks. This suggests a deliberate effort to make it totally useless long after the major fighting in that area was over. And here's where Human Rights Watch provides some really important context. A lot of the infrastructure destruction they documented, like that solar field we just saw, it falls within areas that Israeli officials, like Minister Avi Dichter, publicly said would become a new buffer zone along the border. So when you document this kind of systematic destruction, it naturally raises some very critical questions within the world of international law. The issue isn't just about the damage itself, but whether specific legal lines have been crossed. The first legal concept here is extermination, as a crime against humanity. The key part of this definition from the Rome Statute is that phrase, the intentional imposition of conditions of life. things like taking away access to food, water, and medicine, with the calculation that it will destroy part of a population. The second is an act of genocide. And you'll notice the language in the Genocide Convention is very similar, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction. This act, when you combine it with the specific intent to destroy a group, can be a component of the crime of genocide. So based on its analysis of all this, the destruction of infrastructure, the deprivation of resources, the official statements, Human Rights Watch concludes that these legal thresholds have been met. Now, it's really important to note this is their conclusion, and it is part of a very complex and ongoing process in international courts. The evidence we've looked at paints a pretty grim picture. Destroyed infrastructure, a public health system in ruins, and incredibly serious allegations under international law. The physical damage is obviously immense, but the deeper wounds to a society's health, to its future, are so much harder to measure. And it all leaves this fundamental unanswered question. From this level of devastation, where does rebuilding even begin?